PK, Paul, correct, Paul, Krekorian, right. Paul, I'd like to introduce our Councilman Paul K. Paul Krekorian, who represents the area of Sherman Oaks, roughly north of Ventura Boulevard. And we'd like his views on redistricting and what's going to be happening, and any predictions that he has for his own district, because your district kind of winds around, maybe it needs to be consolidated, kind of East Family, and anyway, talk about that. And maybe if you can address a personal issue, you were a member of one or two large established law firms, is that correct? And you gave it up. You gave up a lot of economic opportunity. Why? Why? Because some people say that a lot of people in the city council, they earn more in the public sector than they could ever earn in the private sector. So why would you do the reverse? So I'm interested in your comments, and then I know you're going to make a short presentation, and we're going to make sure we have a lot of questions are answered. Paul Krekorian.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. I didn't realize this was going to be, Barbara Walters comes to Soha. But, I'll try to get into some of that. Thank you for raising those issues. It's always a great pleasure to be here with you, and I know that everybody's going to, there's a number of questions, so I'm going to try to keep my initial comments as brief as I can so that we have more opportunity for an exchange and discussion. I guess the short answer to the question, the personal question that you raised, Richard, is actually kind of a good entree to the other things I want to talk about. It sounds corny, but yes, it is true. A lawyer in the private sector could probably, make more than what I make now. But really, when I went to state legislature, first when I went to the Board of Education in Burbank, then when I went to the state legislature and now in this position, really what has drawn me to this in, a later period of my life is the opportunity that I saw to really be able to have a lasting impact on the community around me, and hopefully a positive one. Now, as luck would have it, I happened to get into public service at the time when, budgets are collapsing and, services are being cut back rather than being expanded. And so it's been obviously a great frustration for me, as it has been for all of you, that much of the job of any public servant these days is, it seems like, trying to prevent bad things from happening rather than advancing a positive agenda. But that being said, even in these difficult times, I'm trying the best I can, and my staff is trying the best that we all can as a team, to use these difficult times as an opportunity to think about new ways of doing things. Because it's sometimes the things that you can't do in better times, you're forced to do in difficult times. And it forces us all to think outside the box, think of a different way to do things, think of a way to reduce costs of government, think of new ways to be able to increase our economic opportunity and create new jobs, think about new ways to deliver services to constituents quicker and in a more customer-friendly way and in a way that's less expensive. And think of new ways that we can make government more accessible to all of you. And so we've been working really hard to try to think outside the box to come up with those new ways. One development in my office that has happened since I've last come here to speak with you that is a way that we're delivering better services, I think, is that we have our new field deputy for Sherman Oaks, Nikki Azari, who's here with us. And having Nikki join the team was a great step for us and for the delivery of services. She's a very passionate, caring person who really goes above and beyond the call to serve our constituents. You all know that one of my passions has been traffic safety and pedestrian and bicyclist safety and combating the scourge of speeding here in the San Fernando Valley that's beset every major boulevard in the valley for as long as any of us can remember. And I was so pleased to hear Captain Menzel's introductory comments about how the fact that we're making some progress there. But we all know that we have a long ways to go. And I'm so glad to see Jerry Lynch here when I came in. We all got a tremendous wake-up call with the tragedy that beset her family and all of Sherman Oaks when Connor was struck just outside this building. And I hope that the work that we've been doing and the work that Jerry has been doing and so many others who've stood with her is starting to wake people up to the fact that we can't wait any longer to get a handle on this. And that's why we've worked in my office, first of all, to expand the number of bike lanes around the valley, which are getting people out of their cars, but it also tends to slow traffic down when you have designated bike lanes on boulevards. We've got the mobile speed trailers out there all around. You've seen them, all around Sherman Oaks, Studio City, and North Hollywood. They're popping up all over the place. We've been pushing for that to get that done. And we're working on a pedestrian and bicyclist and driver education program to try to make people realize the impacts of speeding. Many of you have expressed concern about what's happening with the ratepayer advocate. We all voted in overwhelming numbers, in March to establish an office of the ratepayer advocate who would have oversight over the financial recommendations of the Department of Water and Power. Now, I serve as vice chair of our Energy and the Environment Committee, and so I'm pleased to tell you that a ratepayer advocate has been selected and is about to take the reins of that office. In the interim period, while it seemed like nothing was really going on, I've organized a working group of the city attorney, the chief legislative, the city legislative analyst, the CAO, and many others to try to actually start preparing the implementing ordinance so that as soon as the ratepayer advocate is hired, we can get to work and finally bring some transparency and some believability and some credibility to the ratepayer recommendation, the rate recommendations that the DWP comes, so that when they come to us and propose a rate increase, we know that this isn't a phony baloney, kind of thing, but it's actually being vetted by an independent professional who has no ties to the DWP, who will be able to advise us on whether or not it's a necessary thing. So I think it's going to be a huge step in changing the culture of the DWP, which is in great need of changing, and we're making progress there. Street services, of course, is the thing that comes up the most often. The condition of our streets is horrible and getting worse. And the truth is, and this is not something that anybody in the city should ever be proud of talking about, but the proof is we're not making progress there. All we're doing is trying to keep from slipping further behind in the condition of our streets. And it really is getting pretty atrocious. So, one of the things, again, along the lines of creative solutions, we found in my office $250,000 that we could, of non-general fund money, that we could allocate to street services for specific projects in our communities that wouldn't otherwise get done. So we identified that funding for pothole repair and slurry sealing and sometimes sidewalk repair and other stump removals and those sorts of things that street services wouldn't otherwise be getting to. We identified some funding so that we could put additional crews on to try to catch up with some of that work. But more importantly than that is we're engaging the community as partners in this. We formed clean teams in communities all around the valley. Community leaders engaged in assisting neighborhoods is the acronym, but we call it our clean team. And basically, this is a way to organize volunteers to work with the city so that you can be the eyes and ears that lets the city work more effectively. It's kind of like what the police would call a force multiplier. You can actually help them to operate more efficiently, more effectively by identifying priority areas that we can bring them in to fix. And we've also empowered the clean team members to be able to identify the things that they can do to help their own neighborhoods without waiting for some bureaucrat to respond, but the things that you can do yourself that will help. And it's really starting to make a difference in terms of cleaning up bulky items that needed to be cleaned up, getting rid of illegal garage sale signs and all these other things, making our streets look less blighted and more presentable. And then the final point that I want to talk about, and then I'll just open it up to talk about whatever you want. A lot of people have been following the debate over what's going to happen in Sacramento with redevelopment. And the CRA, as you know, the CRA programs were eliminated by the state legislature. The Supreme Court of California upheld that decision just recently. And so we were presented in the council with, once the CRA was eliminated, with the option of whether or not we wanted to become the successor agency to the CRA's projects, their obligations, and so on. And I was one of those who stood up and said, the city has no business taking on liabilities that we can't identify, costs that we can't identify, and doing all of this for the sake of questionable benefits at best. When by eliminating the CRA entirely, we're actually going to increase revenues to our general fund that can then be put into street repairs, put into police services, put into fire services, all of the things that we don't have enough funds to do. So I'm pleased to let you know that that argument carried the day, and the CRA is formally dead. And the city's association with the CRA is formally ended. So we will not be going forward as the successor agency of the CRA. So with that, I'm happy to talk to you about football stadium.
Okay.
I have a question on that. I want to thank you all for your excellent questions. Month in and month out, you really come up with great questions. If I don't ask your question, you come up afterwards and ask the council person yourself. A lot of your questions were specific rather than general questions. So,
actually, let me just, on that point, in the back of the room is Jeremy Oberstein, who's my communications director, and anything at all that you want to ask, this whole stack of questions and anything else you want to ask, if we can't get to it tonight, and I don't think we will, please let Jeremy know, and we'll send you an email response, or we'll find out the answer and get back to you, even if, we don't have time.
we're going to try to get through all of them quickly. Short answers.
I'm not so good with quick answers,
Right.
and I'll do my best.
So on reapportionment, what is your position concerning 6 full districts or almost full districts within the San Fernando Valley?
One of my first priorities for redistricting is to maximize the San Fernando Valley's voice in government by increasing the amount of leverage that we have in council. Now, we can't quite get 6 100% districts, but we can get 5 100% districts and 1 75-80% valley district, something like that. That's the direction that we need to move in. And I think that that's important to the valley. The initial draft maps for this will come out on January 25th, and as probably most of you know, there's been a citizens commission that's been taking public input, will prepare some draft maps, and then they'll be subject to public comment and eventually come to the council for vote. But if you've seen a map of my district, you have a sense of how ridiculous it is for so many of the communities in the valley who are divided up. I represent 13 different communities, and 11 of them are divided. I share them with some other council members. Only 2 of the 13 communities in my district are wholly within CD2. Now that just, that disempowers communities when you live in Sherman, and you have to look at a map to figure out who your council member is. It shouldn't be that way.
So I gather you support Sherman Oaks being within one council district.
Well, to the greatest extent possible, I'll just let me leave it at this way, because the Citizens Commission is still working on that. To the greatest extent possible, we should preserve the integrity of the community. Sherman Oaks is a community of interest that ought to be treated as a community of interest. Studio City is a community of interest that ought to be treated as such. We ought to be respectful of neighborhood boundaries.
We had 2 questions, one from Dick Bergman and one from Michael Leonard. And their question is, what is your position regarding the 30-day impound of unlicensed drivers' vehicle? And Charlie Beck's position on this.
I'm struggling with this one a little bit, and I'll tell you why.
Charlie, can you define the...
Here's the issue. So the issue is, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't boned up as much as I need to on this yet. But the issue is basically this. State law requires that under certain circumstances, a driver without a license will have their vehicle impounded for 30 days, a minimum of 30 days, I think it is. Now, state law also, recent state law, has required that if the only violation that the person has is the lack of a license, under certain conditions of being stopped, then that would not apply. So if you're on a suspended license, then your car would be impounded. But if you don't have a license and there's no other offense under this new state law, then under certain circumstances, the car would not be impounded for 30 days. Charlie wanted to implement that for not just the DUI stops,